Hi again. Edmond, Gruss, the Jehovah's Witnesses and Prophetic Speculation. This is our 12th video on this subject based on his chapter, Is Time Running Out for the Witnesses? The Illusion of Urgency. This is the Watchtower of May 1st, 1968 on the Adam and Eve gap, etc. It is logical that he would create Eve soon after Adam, perhaps just a few weeks or months later in the same year, 4026 BCE. After her creation, God's rest day, the seventh period, immediately followed. Therefore, God's seventh day and the time man has been on earth apparently run parallel. To calculate where man is in the stream of time relative to God's seventh day of 7,000 years, we need to determine how long a time has elapsed from the year of Adam and Eve's creation in 4026 BCE. Thus, 8 years remain to account for a full 6,000 years of the seventh day. 8 years from the autumn of 1967 would bring us to the autumn of 1975, fully 6,000 years into God's seventh day, his rest day. That from the Watchtower of May 1, 1968. Now the Awake of October 8th, 1968, that famous special edition, Is It Later Than You Think?, stated that according to reliable Bible chronology, Adam and Eve were created in 4026 BCE. The Jehovah's Witnesses continue to teach that Adam and Eve were both created in the calendar year 4026 BCE and that the seventh day commenced in that same year. For example, Genesis 5:3 states that Adam lived on for 130 years, then he became father to a son in his likeness, in his image, and called his name Sept. In the article on Eve in Aid to Bible Understanding, the reader is told, at the age of 130, another son was born to her. Eve called his name Seth. Certainly, if Adam and Eve were both 130 years of age at Seth's birth, the time gap between their creation could not have been lengthy. And finally, in the 1974 publication, God's Eternal Purpose Now Triumphing for Man's Good, there is a bold heading which states, Evening of seventh creative day begins 4026 BCE. If this date was just speculation or a guess, it should not have been used as a major division of the book. In conclusion, it is obvious that if one takes witness statements and publications seriously, although there have been attempts recently to gain years of time, they have limited the time available before Armageddon occurs to less than a year. He writes this, of course, in 1975 in this particular edition of this book. Then he has a subhead, Are the Genesis days 7,000 years long? That assumption up front, of course, in Watchtower literature. In agreement with C.T. Russell, the witnesses teach that the Genesis days are 7,000-year periods, not 24-hour days. If it could be shown that these days were not 7,000 years long, but days of approximately 24 hours, the current witness speculation as to the time interval between Adam and Eve's creation would no longer be available, for both would have been created during one solar day. It is not this writer's intention to give a lengthy development of this point here. It is true, as Dr. Raymond Serberg stated after examining several views, and Serberg quoted here, despite these many variant ideas concerning the meaning of yom, that is day, there is an impressive amount of evidence favoring the view that the days referred to in connection with the creative activity of God were not long periods, but solar days of approximately 24 hours. And it refers you to the appendix of the book for more information. I need to say, though, at this point that even by conservative standards, Serberg and I think Gruss to represent a small minority of readers and interpreters of Genesis, the idea of 24-hour days, solar days, being the only acceptable explanation. For instance, check out the Oxford scientist, mathematician John Lennox, who is a conservative Christian, on this subject in his YouTube videos on the days of Genesis. Gruss concludes, this appendix asks the question, is time running out for the witnesses? The answer is yes. Or more accurately, it could be said that time has already run out. It is also obvious that the speculation, which has characterized the history of this movement since its inception, still continues. When in his sports arena address, that's Los Angeles, early 1975, F. Franz cautioned his audience not to come to wrong conclusions concerning the time available to realize their human aspirations of marriage, family, education, and job, he reminded this writer of the similar instructions that were given by the witness leadership during World War II. For example, in the summer of 1941, F Rutherford questioned the wisdom of marrying because of the closeness of Armageddon and the millennial kingdom. He asked, quote, why then should a man who has the prospect before him of being of the great multitude now tie himself up to a stack of bones and a hank of hair? End of quote. This statement agreed with the book Children, which was also released in 1941. How close was Armageddon, according to the Watchtower magazine of September 15, 1941? It was reported that the book Children, which was distributed to children at the St. Louis Convention, was, quote, the Lord's provided instrument for most effective work in the remaining months before Armageddon. End of quote. Certainly the piper's tune has not changed. That ends the chapter on the illusion of urgency. And we'll go into the next chapter, chapter 6, false advertising, false prophecy, and false Christianity. The quotes, by the way, from Rutherford and from the publications were from the September 15th, 1941 Watchtower, pages 287 and 288. I'll put in a link to Ray Franz's discussion of this period of time, that is World War II, and what Rutherford rashly said about the advisability of not marrying and certainly not having children until paradise came. See you soon.